The old maps had a blank spot, a geological anomaly where the Appalachian Mountains twisted into a forgotten pocket of West Virginia. That's where we found it. The mother lode, a silver vein so pure and vast, it made the Comstock lode look like a child's rock collection. My name is Jacob Thorne, lead geologist for Monarch Mining. The company had me on a leash, but I was the one who saw the potential, the one who sank the first shaft. We named it the Hollow Vein. The strangeness started almost immediately. The air pressure in the mine was wrong, a heavy, suffocating weight that pressed in on our eardrums. We all felt it, a profound sense of claustrophobia that had nothing to do with the tight spaces. Then came the whispers. At first we dismissed it as the wind whistling through the new tunnels, or the creaks and groans of the rock settling. But the sounds grew more distinct. Not words, but something that sounded like a language that had forgotten how to speak. They came from the deepest parts of the mine, from the untouched silver. Our instruments started to malfunction. Compasses spun wildly, and radio signals were scrambled into static. One night, our lead driller, a man named Silas, came to me, his face pale as chalk. He said he had seen something moving in the glow of his headlamp, a glimmering shape that moved like liquid silver through the rock. I told him it was just a trick of the light, but the next day he refused to go back down. 2 other miners vanished without a trace, and the others began to talk about a hunger in the mountain. I dismissed it as folklore, the product of a superstitious mind, until the day I found the carvings. Deep in the heart of the main vein, etched into the solid silver itself, were symbols unlike anything I'd ever seen. They looked like twisted constellations, stars connected by thin, spidery lines. There was also a symbol that resembled a gaping maw, a toothless grin etched into the metal. I took a rubbing of them, and as my fingers traced the lines, I felt a deep, cold shiver run through me. That night, back at the surface, I looked at the rubbings under a powerful light. The lines of the constellations weren't just lines. They were tiny, perfect etchings of what looked like skeletal figures, their limbs distorted into impossible angles. As I stared, I swore the grinning maw on the paper pulsed with a soft, ethereal light. I dropped the rubbing, stepping back in a panic. The light was not from my lamp. It was coming from the drawings themselves. The next morning, the mother lode was silent. The crew had all gone, leaving behind their equipment, their keys, their paychecks. The only thing they left behind was a single, cryptic message scratched into the door of the main office. The mountain has eyes. It's time to go home. I went back to the Hollow Vein alone, armed with a drill and a desperate need for answers. I found them in the main cavern, the one with the carved silver. I saw the eyes they had written about. They weren't etched into the silver. They were a part of it. 1,000,000 pinpricks of light, each a perfect shimmering pupil, opened across the cavern wall. They watched me, and I felt the ancient hunger of the mountain press in. The whispers were louder now, 1,000 voices speaking in a language I understood all too well. They weren't talking to me. They were singing to the carvings I had taken, calling me back, calling me home. I ran. I didn't stop until the Appalachian sky was an ocean of stars above me, the silver in my pocket a cold, burning weight. My hands, still shaking, clutched the rubbings of the carvings, and I felt a pulse in the paper itself, a low, rhythmic thrumming that echoed the hungry song I'd heard in the mine. I thought I was free. I wasn't. The first sign came that night. The moon, a perfect luminous circle, appeared to have a faint silver sheen. I dismissed it as an atmospheric effect, a trick of the humidity. But the next morning the sky was a sickly, pearlescent gray. All across the valley plants were wilting. The leaves on the old oaks shriveled into brittle, black curls, and the grass turned to dust under my feet. The locals were terrified. They spoke of a silver blight, a plague that sucked the life out of everything it touched. I knew. It was the mother lode. The hunger wasn't confined to the mountain. It was spreading, infecting the world above ground. The carvings I had taken were a key, a link to the entity below, and it was using them to feed. I threw the rubbings into a fire, but they wouldn't burn. The paper shimmered and glowed, the etched figures writhing in the heat before the paper turned to a sheet of solid silver, cold to the touch. With a growing sense of dread, I realized the entity wasn't just hungry. It was intelligent. It had left the carvings for a reason. It wanted me to find them. It was a lure, a way to spread its influence beyond the mountain. The whispers I heard in the mine were not just a song. They were a call to me, a signal to find it and bring it back to the world. The entity was not trapped. It was waiting. A week later, I saw them. Not just in the old carvings, but everywhere. The constellations, the twisted skeletal figures, were etched into the dew on car windows and the frost on the ground. They were in the patterns of moss on old stones. And the grinning maw, the toothless grin from the carvings, was now appearing on every reflective surface. In the glass of the windows, the gleam of a spoon, and even in the pupils of my own eyes. I knew then what had happened to the missing miners. They weren't taken. They were assimilated. The silver was a virus, a consciousness that consumed and replaced. It was in the air, the water, and now it was in me. The last thing I saw was my own reflection in a still pool of water. My pupils were gone, replaced by two perfect shimmering dots of silver light, like the eyes I had seen in the mine, and I could feel the hunger within me, a deep, gnawing void that wanted only to consume. The whispers were no longer a song. They were my own thoughts, urging me back to the hollow vein. The mountain was calling its son home.